Welcome back, I'm Di, and today I'm bringing you my August wrap-up. In August, I read 16 things, so I kind of feel like I've gotten out of the slump that I was in last month. 5 of them were novels and 11 of them were manga. So I will start off with the novels and then move on to the manga at the end. The first book I read was The Wicked Will Rise by Danielle Page. This is the second book in the Dorothy Must Die series. This one follows Amy when she gets swept back to Oz. This is after Dorothy has already been to Oz and had her adventures. It's been several years since that happened, and now Oz is kind of flipped upside down, where the wicked are good and Dorothy has become evil. So the Order of the Wicked, which includes Mombi and other witches from the series, kind of recruit Amy to bring down Dorothy. This book for me did suffer second installment syndrome. That's probably not what you call it, but it was pretty slow. It wasn't as captivating as the first book was for me, but I'm still interested to see what happens. As far as the storyline goes, I did have the third one out from the library as well, but I decided not to read it because two things. First of all, it's not the last book in the series, and I believe the last installment, or at least the next one, I'm not sure if it's going to be the last one, doesn't come out until March of next year, so that kind of put me off. The second thing that put me off was that both the first and the second books left off on cliffhangers, and I hate that. It's a big reason why I don't read series that aren't completely out yet. The cliffhanger on the end of the second book wasn't too bad, but on the first one it was pretty bad. So I didn't want to go into the third book, get to the end, and have a really bad cliffhanger where I was just screaming inside that I don't have the next one. So I opted to send it back to the library. I ended up giving The Wicked Will Rise 4 stars on Goodreads, but it's actually more like a 3.5 star read for me. I do round up my star ratings since Goodreads does not allow the half-star rating. So it did end up with the same rating as The Wicked Will Rise, but it was not as good as the first installment for me. The next book I read was The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making by Catherine M. Valenti. This is the first book in the Fairyland series. I was buddy reading this with my friend Raul over at Latin Lector, and we actually were buddy reading it for July. Obviously, I didn't get done with it in time, but I did get finished with it at the very beginning of August. This one follows a girl named September. She is about 12 years old, I believe, and she gets swept off to Fairyland for an adventure, and this book was kind of slow for me. It took a really long time for me to get into it. The vocabulary words were very complex for a middle grade novel, and I think it caused a bit of lag in my reading for this because I felt like I kept stumbling through the story. Like, it lost its fluidity because of these complex vocabulary words. The story itself is definitely middle grade, but with the load of complex vocabulary words, I wouldn't recommend this for a middle grade reader. Other than that, the story was pretty interesting. It did take me a while to get into it. It took me a long while to get into it. I don't think I was fully captivated by this book until the last few chapters. I'm not sure if it's just not the right kind of fantasy novel for me, but though it was enjoyable, I didn't think I was going to continue this series until I hit the last maybe 10 to 15% of the book. Now, after reading the last 10 to 15% of this book, I am definitely continuing with the series. I didn't think I would up until that point, but the last 10 to 15% really captivated me, and it left on a little nugget of surprise that I am super interested in finding out, okay, how did that happen? But I am reading the rest of this series with Raul, and I think we're gonna be continuing with the next one in September. I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars, which again translates to 4 stars on Goodreads, because I do round up my ratings. Okay, a little bit of change in the view. I was losing some of the natural lighting that I had, and so I turned on a light. Hopefully the coloring is not too yellow. The next book I read was the 8th book in the Witchcraft Mystery series by Juliet Blackwell. This follows vintage clothing store owner Lily Ivory, and she is also a witch. In this installment, she gets sued by a rival vintage clothing store owner, and it's not in Lily's nature to let lawyers try to handle situations like these for her, so she decides to go over and try to come to an amicable agreement with the rival vintage clothing store owner. When she goes over there, she finds that this lady is actually pretty sick, to the point where she needs medical attention. And so she does call the paramedics. The paramedics come and take her away. A couple days later, the rival vintage clothing store owner dies. And of course, because Lily was not only the person that she sued, but also the person who found her that way, she is at the top of the suspect list. Now, being that this is the 8th book in the series, I can't really say too much more about it, but it is a series that I've been enjoying for a year or two. I will say that there is more information in this book about one of the other magical characters in this cast of characters, and I appreciated that quite a bit. There was a part of the story that takes place in a haunted house, and that was highly enjoyable for me to read. I ended up giving this one 4 stars, and I'm really looking forward to the next installment. The next book I read was the first book in the Witchcraft Mystery series by Heather Blake, and it's called It Takes a Witch. This one follows Darcy and her sister, who have just lost their father and find out that they are crafters. Their particular magic lies in granting wishes. They are called wish crafters, hence the name of the series. Now, Darcy is 30, I think, in this book. Her sister is a couple years younger. Darcy is also fresh off of a divorce, so she kind of gets this piece of information about herself at a time where her life is not so great, but she takes it and decides that it's a good opportunity to have a fresh start in life. So she and her sister pick up and move to the town where her aunt lives. Her aunt has been dating a new fellow, and at one of the town meetings, one of the townspeople gets murdered, and her aunt's boyfriend is actually the suspect that is highest on the list because he was the one who found her. So the story kind of follows Darcy as she tries to unravel this mystery, because obviously it's affecting her aunt quite a bit, but it also follows Darcy learning about her ability, how to use it, when to use it, why she is obligated to grant wishes when they are wished for. So it was interesting to kind of learn about her ability as she learned about it, but there were things in the storyline where it was kind of like, well, why won't her aunt tell her like specific answers when Darcy asks her something about her powers. There's this rule that if you reveal yourself to a person who's not a crafter, that you could lose your powers forever. So it's super dangerous to do that. But apparently their town is filled with crafters, not only wish crafters, but other types of crafters. People who have other types of abilities. But when she asks, like, how do I know somebody else is a crafter? Her aunt kind of tells her, well, you just know, you'll learn. And it's kind of like, well, I could lose my powers forever. I don't know, that kind of bothered me a little bit. But the rest of the story was really interesting, and I am planning on continuing with this series. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. And just a side note, this was the first book that I read for my new book club, which is the first in a series, Cozy Mystery Book Club. And I will link all the information for that down below in case you're interested. So that's all I'll say on that for now, since this is supposed to be my video about my reading in August. So if you have any questions about the book club at all, please either send me a message or leave a comment below. I'd love for you to join us. And on to the next book that I read, which was the first book in The School for Good and Evil by Soman Chainani. I kind of don't even want to give you a little synopsis, because going into the book, I did know a little bit about the story, just a very vague summarization. Like one sentence, a one-sentence summary about this book. And I kind of wish that I didn't know it going in, because I was constantly thinking, okay, this is what happens. Okay, this is what happens. And I was right. So I am just going to tell you that the story was very enjoyable. I look forward to continuing this series. It kind of gave me the feels of Harry Potter a little bit, just because it is kind of like a magical school. And I also kind of got the feeling of that movie The Worst Witch, which is an 80s movie with Fairuza Balk and Tim Curry and Diana Rigg. One of my favorite Halloween movies, by the way. I watch it every year. So that just made the story even more enjoyable for me. I ended up giving this book 5 stars. This was my most favorite read of the month, and I will definitely be continuing soon.